Hi, and welcome to our March episode of Plugged In. I'm Kathryn Spetch, and I co-lead our work in the gaming space here at Odgers Berndtson, appointing leaders and advisors to positions across the industry. And today it's brilliant to be joined by all-round great human, Fawzi Mesmar. Hi, Fawzi.
Hey, Kathryn, thank you so much for the humbling introduction.
Fair to say that Fawzi is an accomplished and pretty excellent creative leader in the industry who has a particular passion, I know from the conversations that we've had, for developing high-performing and fulfilled teams, and has worked across a broad range of IP and creative environments from Candy Crush through to Battlefield. So I thought, who better than to discuss the topic of fostering creative excellence than him. So before we broach that super simple topic that obviously, we'll be able to solve within 2 minutes, Fawzi, I thought it might be helpful if you could give us a quick plotted history on your career, please.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible and leave you room for lots of questions, hopefully. So hello, everybody. My name is Fawzi Mesmar. I am a game designer. It's what I've been doing for the past 20 years. I started off as an independent developer in Jordan. That's where I'm from. I was in university studying computer science, and me and my friends, we decided to make a game for the Game Boy Advance. And of course, it was an RPG. And of course, we never finished it. But it's what got all of us into this business, being one of the first independent teams in the Middle East region. From then on, my career, as you mentioned, is a little bit of a rainbow. I did a little bit of everything, and it took me around the world. From the Middle East to New Zealand to Japan to Germany to Sweden. I've moved on quite a bit, and I've taken quite a bit of different types of roles, from like failed Game Boy Advance games to console, PC, Facebook, Flash games at some point, Vita, PlayStation Portable, back to mobile, then back to AAA. Like I touched a little bit of everything. Currently I am VP of editorial at Ubisoft, so that means I work with a variety of creative teams across the world, helping them bring in their creative visions to life. Prior to that, I was head of design at DICE. I was managing all of design across the studio and all of our franchises, including all the Battlefield and Star Wars Battlefront games that we had in development at the studio. Outside of that, I am very active in academic circles. I teach game design pretty much in every country I've ever lived in. I currently teach game design in Future Games in Stockholm, but I also taught game design in Berlin Games Academy, Auckland University in Science and Technology, you name it. Very active in the academic community, and I do a bit of writing, and I've written some books on the topic as well. So yeah, I tried to summarize 20 years in 5 minutes, but that's that's a bit about me.
I think you did a very good job there, and it does demonstrate the breadth that you have, Fawzi, and what you've done, which is why I wanted to talk to you specifically about this topic today. So thank you.
Pleasure.
When we look across the industry today, and as we said, looking across in its broadest sense, because you've seen so much of it, what do you think to the creative prowess that we have in the industry? Is it thriving? Is it challenged or otherwise?
I am constantly inspired by the teams I work with across this industry, no matter, and I think probably the most interesting part is like no matter where in the world, there is that same X factor of people that are so passionate and driven about and dedicated, to not just wanting to make something special. They want to make something special that touched people's hearts, because you know what? Almost every single person that's worked on a game has been touched by a game themselves at some point. They played someone else's game, they got so inspired, like, oh my God, this had such a big impact of my life. I want to, do the same to someone else. And when it's something this personal, coming out in what you do every day, it's it's truly inspiring. To me personally, like, seeing the how far people would go to inject their creativity into the games that they're building, and it's just like now, like, having worked in so many different countries and different cultures, to just I step foot in a game dev studio and I will find a lot of that same energy. I find that to be fascinating, really.
When the breadth that you've talked about in terms of geography is really fascinating, but also actually so is some of the commercial models that these studios are working within. And whether you're working in a publicly traded company or looking to secure follow-on funding at the moment, the external market is tougher than it has been for a while. We were just saying before we started that actually we've had almost 3 years of unprecedented growth, which is now starting to slow, and there's been a slight panic. But this type of kind of pressure can put on budgetary and time pressures on the game teams, and means that maybe creatives feel like they're cutting corners in some ways. What would your advice be to creative leaders in handling those situations, and also creatives within the team that are currently on their own career trajectory?
It's really interesting because games as a business, because of its highly creative part, will inevitably be affected by. I really like Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And to some extent, we are in an industry that is always at the cutting edge of technology, in which we are always trying to push the boundaries of technology and entertainment. And our players have come to expect that in terms of when a game comes out, we want it to be something that we've never seen before. And this is where I think it's interesting where the innovator's dilemma kind of kicked in, because when a team comes out of nowhere with a brand new innovation and that kind of breaks new ground, it creates something that is so popular and successful that kind of could make it difficult for people to deviate too much around, because now you have this big successful thing, and if you change it too much, then you alienate your core audience who want more of what they liked about your product. But if you deviate too much, you lose these people. But if you don't deviate enough, then eventually people will be like, oh, it's more of the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So much like other industries, especially across the board, we need to be aware of that. Is that we need to hit that right ratio of innovation while maintaining the truth towards the audiences that are expecting something from us as well. And I think as an advice for creative leaders across the industry is that the larger macro context around the games, the companies, and where we are as an industry has such a huge value and has a really big implication that I think we need to involve the creative teams in it as well. See, creative teams are problem solvers by nature. As part of the creative process is that we want to understand the problem so that they solve it. And maybe traditionally at some point there was the thinking we'll handle the economic stuff and the context and let the creative team be creatives. And I believe involving the creative teams with the context actually will help us with the innovation dilemma, but also will help us to break new ground. And when the teams are offered the context, they are also offered ownership. They can understand what is the dynamic that surrounds the business, in addition that what surrounds the project itself. So therefore, they'll be likely to try to strike that balance. How can I satisfy the audience? How can I satisfy myself as a creator? And then how can I make sure that we're still paying the bills? So I feel we need to move towards, and I think we are getting there more than ever before, to shatter that divide between the business context and the creative context, and to bring them closer together, have more people that speak both languages, talk to each other, and work together towards innovating on games as a product first, then and as a business as well.
I think that's a really great way of looking at it, because as you said, both sides need to be able to communicate with the other and almost not see them as two sides. That's probably the wrong phrasing for me to
It's
use.
true.
But, when I look at the searches that I work on here, it's particularly when we're working on senior creative searches, we are being asked more and more to find individuals who have that commercial nous as well as that creative ability. And it's not necessarily that both need to be innate. Usually one is kind of more innate, if you like, than the other. But you need people that have been exposed to the other side within different studios and businesses. And if studios and businesses don't allow that to happen, then we're limiting the impact and success of people and also the industry, I would say. And also when you mention, typically there'll be something new that comes out every so often that is, blows everybody away and is completely new and very innovative in the field. And then what you see for the next few years is all studios and businesses trying to emulate that or that type of gameplay, which is fine, but there needs to be another cycle. And you don't get that other cycle by allowing your senior creatives to invest in areas that perhaps don't feel quite so obvious at this point in time. So it's that flexibility and ownership as well. You mentioned that word.
I like that you brought that up because it's a topic that is usually brought up whenever innovation is discussed in creativity. See, most people, when they think of innovation, they're thinking of radical innovation. And radical innovation is basically what you described, when something comes out of nowhere and surprises everybody and is completely disruptive and industry changing. But if you think about how often that happens, you will find that it comes once in the blue moon. And the recipes of how that came to be is almost hard to understand.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, this radical innovation even came by accident to some extent. Like a team was trying to do something and they hit this brand new ground by accident. But what most likely happened is incremental innovation. And incremental innovation, as part of creativity generally, incremental innovation is that, you take a concept and you slightly improve it. And and if you stretch that across a long period of time, then you will get perceived radical innovation. To give you an example, when Doom first came out in the early 90s, every single first-person shooter that came out was called a Doom clone. It was literally, the entire genre was called Doom clone, that now we call first-person shooter. So if I stretch that out from Doom to, let's say, Fallout 4, I doubt anyone would tell me that Fallout 4 is a Doom clone. Though it's decades of incremental innovation on that formula. So the so-called imitators or the companies that following industry trend is in fact a normal part of the incremental innovation process, in which is part of the design process, the design of everything, not just video games, even designing teacups. The first teacup probably did not have the thing that you need to carry the teacup with. And then all the other teacups were experimenting with how big or wide or where that thing needs to be until, somebody found the thing that worked really, really well. And the design process is by itself iterative, which means that we need to try out so many different things and often fail to find out what really works and then build on it. And if you stretch that over a period of time is when we get with the perceived radical innovation. And if you look at most projects that we would even call that truly innovative and market changing, at their heart, they slightly increased on something that already exists.
Everything is always in some way incremental innovation, isn't it? Because it's based on something. The reality is not every idea is 100% new. It just can't be. It's an impossibility.
The iPhone, before the iPhone, there were a lot of touch phone devices. There was a lot of other devices called PDAs that were connected to the internet. To some extent, there were devices with styluses. There were all kinds of mobile phones. It was a wild era of mobile phones, actually, come to think about it, because there were all kinds of weird taco-shaped phones and stuff that we were experimenting with, what this device in our pocket could potentially be. And the iPhone, to some extent, added a lot of elements and excelled at doing them. But even the iPhone, actually, the only at the third iteration did it get really good. The first two iPhones were good, but they did not really like revolutionize the market in the same way that when the iPhone 3G first came out. And so yeah, it's easy. It's like it's easy to kind of go like iPhone 3G changed the world. It absolutely did, but it didn't come out of the blue. It came out of like when it came out, it was another one. Oh, another touch phone. I don't want to use my finger. I would rather use the buttons as I would on a BlackBerry, which I heard from a lot of people when the iPhone came out.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I was a BlackBerry user, I'll be honest, Fawzi.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if we think about the people side of what we've talked about, and I said at the beginning, we've had conversations in the past about how important you feel it is to play your part in helping others to realize their potential. So how do you think we can make creatives in the industry thrive at all levels who are on that journey?
So there is. So to help them, like I think what I do personally to kind of like try to push that envelope is starts off with two things. Is that can you be able to share your knowledge and experience as much as possible? Can you reach out to as many people and share and be open and humble and share your experiences? And at the same time, being open to being wrong and learning from others at the same time. So like, it's can you try to exude the humbleness of taking the learnings like we're walking on the shoulder of giants kind of thing and learn from the experiences that came with us. Again, incremental, incremental learning kind of comes into place. And then, can you do your part of adding, do you have that courage to create and add your part to share your knowledge so that people can pick that up, walk on your shoulders, and then do their part too. So I think like I feel like for me it's almost personal, and I feel it like a little bit of a responsibility to like if I've learned something to try to share it with as many people as possible. Whether I've learned something to do or something to not do, to try to help get that knowledge across to as many people as possible, so that they can also share it as well. Which is why like I engage a lot in like all of these educational aspects. But also is adding a lot of voices, like if we become an echo chamber of a lot of similar voices that have very similar experiences, inspired by the same things, playing the same games, then we are likely to continue to create a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Because inspiration at its heart is analogous. So that means that in the back of your mind there will be a problem that you need to solve, and then as you're going about with your life, you're taking input. And as you're taking this input, a connection happens at the back of your mind and a eureka moment occurs. And now suddenly I am inspired with this brand new idea. So if we are all looking at the same stuff and we all have the same perception of life and the same perspective, and we're all the same people and we're looking at the same stuff, then we're going to continue to come up with very similar ideas. And only when we allow a lot of different voices, different perspectives on lives, opposing opinions, and look at different stuff, will we like widen that pool from which we get inspired.
Yeah, which
and therefore, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just going to say, Fawzi, as an industry, we haven't been particularly brilliant at doing that across the industry, but in particular when you look at design and creative fields, the diversity within those is particularly poor, especially from a gender diversity perspective. And I think, across the industry, I think leadership wise, we're looking at about 25% being women. And I think it's something around 16, 17% of design directors or creative directors are women, which isn't great. And it will cause that echo chamber. What do you think we can do to change that? And I know that this whole kind of avoiding the echo chamber piece is very important to you, to the point where you've released your own book. I know about the first ever book written in the Arabic language around the topic of game design. So I know that it's really important to you, which is why I'm always keen to get your views.
Thank you so much. And you're right, it is very personal for me because me myself, it was so difficult for me to get into the industry and prove that, I have what it takes, doing air quotes. Um, and therefore, like, I wanted to try to pave the way for so many people that could come after me to not have to go through this, including, like, I'm fortunate enough to have learned to speak English from quite a young age. My mother is an English teacher. Um, so I got my hands on so many books when I was learning game design, and I still made so many mistakes. And I've learned through my mistakes, still do. But like, I had to make so many mistakes at the beginning that I would have loved to, help others avoid going through this.
Mm.
And yeah, I wanted to write a book to kind of like help people that they don't have to learn another language in order for them to get that knowledge. So I wanted to just provide, that knowledge that didn't exist before in Arabic to a new generation, hopefully, of game developers that come from the region.
And it shows that echo chamber, by the way, because that's not something that anybody who doesn't speak Arabic would have been remotely aware of being a problem. That those kind of facilities weren't available.
And you know what? What's really interesting is that after I've written this book and like people started to write articles about it, like I got approached by like game designers and academics in different parts of the world that are now like we got inspired by what you did, and now we're writing a book in Italian or in this other language that we're like, yeah, we should also be doing something like this and like improving that access to information, which I really really like. But I guess like when it comes to like helping and defeat that echo chamber, of diversity across the board, gender and otherwise, is that we need to be proactive instead of reactive. And that means that we as leaders, we need to identify that there is a problem. We need to agree with that. And as you said, it's hard. It's hard to know that there's a problem if you're part of it. But that's why we need to like take bias trainings, be aware of our own biases, and then make sure that we are actively collecting feedback from those around us to help us with our blind spots, so that we can do something about it. And that's the proactive part, because ultimately, in order for us to be welcoming into that industry, we need to do something about it. Because there's a people outside that really want to get in, but they either don't know how, or they are intimidated, and we need to extend our hands to others. Everything that good that ever happened to me was because someone took a chance on me. Till this day, like my current job, somebody took a chance on me. Go like, let's give this guy a shot. And we need to adopt this mentality, in which like we need to take a chance on somebody, but also help them. Go like, if we provide these people with this opportunity, with this level of education, with an environment that helps in grassroots, welcomes people into this industry, with a fair play environment that they can enjoy playing video games without having to suffer from harassment or anything like this. If we actively, take all of these steps to kind of help create that environment, then naturally more people are gonna join, because we are going out there to get them in. And that's what I mean by being proactive. It's not like, right, yeah, but we have a job application board, or we have the website that they can read. It's like, to some extent, we need to go out there in the same way that I'm here on this podcast, telling people about, like, no, reach out to, I'm going to be in your university, in your conference, in your city. I'll answer all of your questions. Come and find me here. Come and find me there.
Yeah, it's taking that responsibility on, isn't it? And it does feel like quite a big task, but it's such an important one. And it's about thinking broader than even what exists in the industry now, because we all know that the talent that is in the industry now is in the industry, and it is what it is at a director level or beyond. And it's about making sure that we don't get to the same stage in 5 years' time, whereby we don't have enough diversity at leadership level. Because when you look at the more junior positions, actually diversity is much better. It's still not fantastic, but it is better. So there's kind of two things to solve. One, getting people in at grassroots level, but then two, ensuring that actually it isn't just a single type of individual that is able to kind of break through any glass ceilings within the organization. So it is about looking at what you can do outside of the organization and speaking to people that are in education currently. And also I think the role model piece is really important, because it doesn't matter. I mean, well, it does matter if you don't have any female creative leaders in your business. You should be trying to address that. But the point is that shouldn't be an excuse as to why you can't encourage other younger females to come through and take that route, because actually what you can do is go outside of your business and look at other businesses, communicate, collaborate, and find other people to be role models for individuals within your organization. Don't be afraid to kind of break those walls down within your business to others.
I agree completely. Like it's there's no silver bullet. You need to knock on every door, and so it's being proactive within the organization, outside of the organization, on your own personal time, even, like, you know, and answering messages, getting in touch with people, and all of that stuff. It's like, you know, within the organization, of having that as one of your targets in your recruitment process, in your evaluation processes, in your nurturing process, in your development plan, in your future talent, in talent mapping. All of that stuff needs to take that kind of mentality adapted in its as part of its targets. So it's a organization-wide approach, but it's also an industry-wide approach inside and outside the companies.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I don't think we're going to solve it all today, Fawzi, but thank you very, very much for taking the time to do this. Been a brilliant conversation, and hope to speak soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.